He thought it was over. The war was gone, the past buried, and the world had moved on. No one was searching anymore. At least, that's what he told himself. He had a new name, a new life, a quiet routine that never changed. Every day looked the same, and that sameness made him feel safe. 15 years passed without a single knock on the door. No questions, no accusations, no consequences. He became invisible. Just another worker, just another face in the crowd. That was the plan. Disappear completely. But the past doesn't disappear. It waits. It listens. And sometimes it comes back in the smallest way. His son made a mistake. A simple conversation at school. A few words spoken too casually, to the wrong person. A name was mentioned. Not loudly, not clearly, but enough for someone to notice. That moment changed everything, because some names are never forgotten. The information began to move, slowly, quietly, from one person to another, without urgency, but with precision. It reached people who understood what it meant, people trained to recognize patterns others ignore. Soon it arrived where it mattered, inside Mossad. No announcement was made, no alarms were raised. Just a file reopened, a name written at the top. Adolf Eichmann, one of the men who helped organize a system that moved millions to their deaths. Not a soldier, but something far more efficient. After the war ended in 1945, he disappeared without a trace. For years, it seemed like he had escaped, but now there was a lead, a real one. A man living quietly in Buenos Aires. He called himself Ricardo Clement, an ordinary worker with an ordinary life. Same bus, same route, same timing every day. Predictable, careless. They began to watch him, from a distance, without being seen. Days turned into weeks, and the pattern became clear. The face matched, the behavior matched. The past had finally caught up with him. They didn't rush. They waited for the right moment, because they would only get one chance. The operation had begun, and he had no idea. When the war ended in 1945, chaos covered everything. Cities were destroyed, governments collapsed, and millions of people were displaced. In that confusion, some men didn't just survive, they vanished completely. Adolf Eichmann was one of them. Not a soldier on the battlefield, but a man behind systems. He organized deportations, coordinated transport, and turned human lives into numbers on paper. When everything fell apart, he understood one thing. Staying visible meant death. So he disappeared. No dramatic escape, no final moment, just silence, new papers, and a slow fade into anonymity. For years, he moved carefully across Europe, avoiding attention, changing locations, relying on networks that helped men like him disappear. Each step was calculated, each identity temporary. Eventually, he found a path out. South America. A place far from Europe, far from trials, far from consequences. A place where many others had already gone. In Argentina, he became someone else. Ricardo Clement. A name with no history, no weight, no connection to the past. Just another immigrant trying to survive. He lived quietly, worked hard, followed routines, blended in. That was the key. Never stand out, never attract attention, never give anyone a reason to look closer. Years passed. The world changed. New conflicts began. New headlines replaced the old ones. For most people, the past was fading into history, and that was his greatest advantage. Time. Time made people forget. Time made the impossible seem irrelevant. Time turned fugitives into ordinary men. But time also creates patterns, and patterns can be seen. He built a life that depended on predictability. The same bus, the same schedule, the same movements every single day. What made him feel safe would later expose him, because the more perfect the routine, the easier it is to track. And somewhere, far away, people were still looking. Not loudly, not publicly, but patiently, and without limits. They didn't start with certainty. They started with a rumor, a name whispered in the wrong place, repeated just enough to matter. For most people, it meant nothing. For them, it meant everything. The first reports were unclear. A man in Argentina, a strange story from a teenager, a father with a past that didn't match his present. It sounded weak, but weak leads are often the beginning of something real. They began to check, quietly. No official requests, no records, just people asking questions, connecting fragments, testing whether the story could survive closer inspection. Names were compared, dates aligned, old photographs studied. The more they looked, the less it felt like coincidence. Something was there, hidden just beneath the surface. They sent someone to observe, not to act, only to watch. A single person, blending into the city, becoming part of the background. No contact, no interference, just eyes. Buenos Aires was large, chaotic, full of movement, perfect for hiding. But even in chaos, patterns exist. And patterns, once seen, cannot be unseen. The man they watched lived simply. No luxury, no attention. He worked long hours, returned home quietly, spoke little, trusted routine more than instinct. They followed from a distance. Across streets, through crowds, onto buses, never too close. Never the same face twice, always changing, always careful. Photographs were taken in secret, blurred at first, then clearer. Angles compared to old images, features measured. Time had changed him, but not enough. They noticed small things, the way he stood, the way he turned his head. Habits that don't disappear, even after 15 years. Still, doubt remained. It had to. A mistake here would mean disaster. So they waited longer, watched more, confirmed again. One detail became decisive. A date, an anniversary at his home, a quiet family moment. But the timing matched something from the past, something only one man would celebrate. That was enough. The uncertainty ended. The man called Ricardo Clement was not just a worker. He was Adolf Eichmann. The search was over, but the mission had just begun, because finding him was only step one. Taking him was something else entirely. They chose the night carefully, not too late, not too early. Just enough darkness to hide movement, but not enough to attract attention. Every detail was calculated, because failure here meant everything would collapse. For days, they studied the street, the timing of buses, the rhythm of footsteps, the silence between passing cars. Nothing was random anymore. Every second had a purpose. He followed his routine, as always. The bus stopped. He stepped off. Same place, same time, same walk home. He didn't look around. He didn't need to. Routine had replaced fear. They were already there, waiting. Spread across the street, blending into shadows, standing like ordinary people. No uniforms, no signals, just awareness. One man moved slightly closer. Another adjusted his position. Everything was silent, but everything was ready. The distance closed, step by step. Then, the moment. A voice, soft, controlled. Un momentito, señor. He turned, confused. That hesitation lasted less than a second, but it was enough. They grabbed him instantly, one hand over his mouth, another locking his arms. No shouting, no struggle that anyone could hear, just controlled force, precise and practiced. They pulled him off the road, into darkness. A car door opened, then slammed shut. It was over in seconds. The street returned to silence. Inside the car, he struggled to breathe, trying to understand what had just happened. No one spoke. Not yet. They checked his face again. Closed this time. Years had changed him, but not enough. Still, they needed confirmation. Absolute. One of them asked quietly, "Your name?" He hesitated. The instinct to lie still there, but the weight of the moment pressed in. He knew. There was no escape now. No story that would save him. Finally, he spoke. Softly. "I am Adolf Eichmann." No doubt remained. No questions left. They drove through the city, invisible among thousands of others. But everything had changed, for him, completely. He disappeared again that night, but this time, not by choice. They took him to a prepared safe house, hidden, secured, isolated. No windows, no outside world, only silence and control. He was restrained, watched at all times. No mistakes now, not at this stage, because the hardest part was still ahead, getting him out. They had him secured, but that meant nothing yet. Capturing him was only the beginning. The real danger started now, getting him out of Argentina without anyone noticing. They were operating in a foreign country, no legal authority, no protection. If they were discovered, it wouldn't just be a failure. It would become an international crisis overnight. They couldn't move him openly. They couldn't request extradition. They couldn't even explain what they were doing. Everything had to remain invisible. Time was against them. The longer he stayed hidden, the higher the risk. Someone could notice. Someone could talk. One mistake could expose everything. They kept him inside the safe house, under constant watch. No contact with the outside world. No sound, no light that could draw attention. They needed a plan that didn't look like a plan. Something that would pass through security without raising suspicion. Something that would hide him in plain sight. Then an opportunity appeared. An official delegation from Israel was scheduled to arrive. A public event, a celebration connected to independence. A plane, a legal entry, a controlled exit. That was the key. They built the cover carefully. Documents were prepared, identities assigned, roles defined. Every detail had to match reality perfectly. But there was one problem: him. He couldn't walk freely. He couldn't answer questions. He couldn't be seen as who he really was. So they created a new version of him, a different identity. A man who belonged on that plane. They dressed him as a crew member. Uniform, documents, everything in place. But his condition had to be explained. The story was simple. He had been drinking. Too much. Now he was sick, unable to speak, barely conscious. To make it real, they sedated him, carefully measured. Enough to keep him quiet, not enough to lose control completely. They rehearsed the sequence again and again, from the car to the airport, from the entrance to the aircraft. Every step had to look natural. No hesitation, no sudden movement. The day arrived. Tension everywhere. The car moved through the city slowly. No shortcuts, no risks. Just another vehicle in traffic. He sat between them, head down, silent, a man who had no idea what would happen next. At the airport, everything slowed down. Security, officials, eyes watching. They stepped out together, supporting him on both sides, like colleagues helping a sick friend. No one stopped them at first. Just another group moving toward departure. Then came the check. Documents, faces, questions. A pause. Too long. One officer looked closer. Suspicion. For a second, everything was at risk. One question could end it. But then, a decision. A nod. They were cleared. They moved forward, step by step, inside the aircraft. Doors still open. Still not safe. Anything could happen at any moment. Then the doors closed. Final. The engines started, loud, irreversible. The plane began to move. Slow at first, then faster. No one spoke. No one moved. Until finally, they lifted off. Argentina disappeared below them, and with it, the last chance of failure. He had escaped once after 1945, but this time he wasn't escaping. He was being taken back to face everything. Only then did they allow themselves to breathe, because they had done it. The impossible was now complete. The announcement shocked the world. No leaks, no warnings, just a sudden statement. Israel had captured Adolf Eichmann. After years of silence, one of the most wanted men was alive and in custody. News spread instantly. Headlines filled newspapers across Europe, America, and beyond. People asked the same questions. How was he found? How was he taken? And what would happen next? The trial began in 1961 in Jerusalem. Security was unlike anything seen before. The courtroom was tightly controlled, and a bulletproof glass booth was built for him to sit inside. He looked ordinary. That was the first shock. No uniform, no visible signs of power. Just a quiet man in a suit, sitting behind glass, writing notes, adjusting his glasses. But the evidence told a different story. Documents were presented, signatures confirmed, transport records traced. The system he helped build became visible, piece by piece. Witnesses came forward. Survivors, families, people who had seen everything and carried it for years. Their testimonies were detailed, personal, and impossible to ignore. They described trains, schedules, lists, selections, processes that turned human lives into numbers. The courtroom changed with every testimony. What had once been distant history became immediate, real, undeniable. He listened in silence, calm, controlled, detached. When he spoke, his defense was simple. I followed orders. That phrase spread everywhere, across media, across countries. It became a symbol, not of justification, but of something far more disturbing, because it revealed how systems work, not through chaos, but through structure, through people who execute without question. The prosecution dismantled that defense, step by step. They showed that he was not just following. He was organizing, improving, expanding. The details were precise, too precise to deny. Months passed. Each session added another layer. More witnesses, more documents, more clarity. The world kept watching. For many, this was the first time they understood what had really happened. Not rumors, not fragments, but full reality. The verdict was inevitable. Guilty, on all major counts. No ambiguity, no uncertainty. The sentence followed: death. It was carried out in 1962, quietly, without spectacle. But the impact was anything but quiet. The trial changed global awareness forever, and it sent a message, clear and impossible to ignore. Time does not erase responsibility. Distance does not guarantee safety, because someone, somewhere, is still watching. The mission didn't end in 1962. It never does. One capture, one trial, one execution. That was not the system. It was only a message. The real system continued, quietly, constantly. Mossad adapted. New targets, new threats, new methods. The world was changing. Wars became less visible, but not less dangerous, just harder to see. In 1972, everything escalated again. The Munich Olympics, athletes taken hostage, the world watching. Then failure, 11 dead. That moment changed everything. Again. There would be no waiting, no delays, no negotiations. A new operation began, across multiple countries. No official name, but a clear objective. Find those responsible, one by one. And they did. Cities across Europe became hunting grounds. Different teams, different identities. Targets were tracked for weeks, sometimes months. Then, action. A phone would ring. A door would open. An explosion. A shot. And it was over. No warnings, no announcements, just silence. Some operations failed. Mistakes happened. In 1973, in Lillehammer, Norway, the wrong man was killed. For a moment, they were exposed. Arrests, interrogations, headlines. But only for a moment. They adapted. They always do. The methods evolved. More precise, more controlled. Then came a new battlefield. Invisible. Cyber operations. Digital weapons. One of the most known, Stuxnet. A virus designed not to steal, but to destroy. No soldiers. No bombs, just code. Machines failed. Systems collapsed. And no one officially claimed it. But everyone understood. This was the future. Silent war. But some things never change. They still watch. They still wait. Years can pass. Nothing happens. Then, suddenly, everything does. A mistake. A signal. And the process begins again. You won't see it. You won't hear it. There is no warning, no second chance. Because by the time you realize, it's already over. Some organizations forget. Some move on. But not this one. Files stay open. Names stay written. And once you're on that list, time doesn't matter anymore. Because they don't forget. And they don't stop. And somewhere right now, someone is being watched.